impact. And having a lawyer on the types of cases that we do pro bono, we have found makes all the difference. Whether you are a transactional attorney or a litigator, whether you're practicing in tax or healthcare, we have a spectrum of pro bono attorneys who are successfully achieving client outcomes in all of our pro bono matters. And having a lawyer there for those clients who wouldn't otherwise have one makes a real difference. So I want to just set the stage starting there. Once you're doing your training today for special education, you're really all set and ready to go. And we have some cases in front of you that I'll talk about and we'll talk about later today as you think about where you might want to start with us or continue with us. So thinking about the who of pro bono at Children's Law Center, so I'm our pro bono director. You have heard from Alyssa Tender, at least giving you an email about today's training. She's our pro bono and intake assistant, and so you'll also be seeing her at pro bono trainings as well as emailing about cases when you're taking cases with us. We have a staff of mentors in all of the different practice areas that we place pro bono. So when you get a case, you're working with a mentor from CLC who practices in that case type. Our pro bono attorneys, I just mentioned, we have a spectrum of them. So everything from private practice to government, as well as solo retired attorneys who are seeking to give back to the community as well. You do need to be barred in DC or eligible to practice in DC under Rule 49 of the DC Court of Appeals. There have been some amendments to Rule 49 which only expand eligibility to practice. So the intention really is to have more people doing pro bono because our neighbors need more lawyers to help them with an array of issues. What are the types of cases that we place at Children's Law Center? So we're placing about 200 matters, new matters each year pro bono. And there's a variety, but there are 4 main types, and those are the 4 that you see on the screen. So you're here for special education. We also have housing conditions cases. Both of those cases come from our medical legal partnership that you're going to hear more about from my colleague momentarily. We also have 2 family law type cases. So that's representing a third-party caregiver. We have a lot of relatives, a lot of grandmothers who are seeking to provide children with a safe and stable home, either through adoption, guardianship, or custody. We also represent children as clients. It's best interest representation as guardians ad litem. Those are custody matters where the custody and visitation concerning a child is at dispute among typically the child's parents. So those are the 4 types of cases that we primarily place pro bono each year. Where are we getting these cases? So if you're representing a child client in a custody case as a guardian ad litem, the judge is sending that referral directly to Children's Law Center. There is no right to an attorney in those cases, and they can be very difficult to resolve without a lawyer advocating for the child's best interests. So judges send referrals directly to Children's Law Center. Pediatricians, that gets back to our medical legal partnership. We have special education and housing conditions cases coming from our work with pediatricians in the city. And so they can be treating a child for asthma, allergies, different diagnoses that might be at play for special education eligibility. There are all sorts of ways that we're getting cases through our partnership with various clinics across DC. And then from the community itself. So we have neighbors who are giving us a call at Children's Law Center. We have a lot of those relatives who are caring for children saying, I'd like to move forward to make this legal, to make sure that there aren't any barriers standing in the way of my continued care of this child. So if you take on one of these cases, and I'm saying we have a spectrum of pro bono attorneys who are successfully achieving outcomes for our clients, what's the how of our pro bono program? How is that working? And so there are a few things here that I think make our pro bono program particularly successful. Children's Law Center is screening on the front end. So we are experts at the work that we're doing, and there are certain cases that may demand our expertise. And so those are cases we're going to handle in-house. Meanwhile, there are a lot of community members who need our help, and the cases are perfectly well suited for a pro bono attorney, someone who doesn't do this practice all day. We have trainings, we have resources. There's no need to invent the wheel. You see in front of you this nice spirally bound set of materials and even a flash drive. So those are some of the resources. So you're going to see our slides from the training in those materials today, and that flash drive is actually our training manual for special education. We have all sorts of things on that manual. It's also on our website. We'll put these slides on our website as well. And so these are things that you can reference and use as you're taking on a case. The last, but certainly not least, part of the how and how we support our pro bono attorneys is the mentoring piece. So I mentioned before that part of pro bono with Children's Law Center is our staff mentors and having someone who does the type of work that you're taking on be your mentor. So if you take on a special education case with us, you're going to be assigned someone who practices special education as your mentor. And that's really useful for a couple of reasons. You've got someone who knows the substance and is going to be able to talk that through with you. They're going to be able to answer questions about procedure, just how things look in practice. And we've been around doing this work for a while, so we know a lot of the players, and we can talk about how that, the law is the law. What does it look like in practice can be a very different thing. And so strategizing, talking through your questions, thinking through your next steps, and how you can best advocate to achieve your client's goals, the mentoring piece is a really great part of the program. This may come as no surprise, the why of pro bono, why people are doing pro bono with us. This is what we keep hearing year after year. This is a very hands-on type of lawyering, whichever case type you might do with us. And you're having a lot of client counseling opportunities, being able to work on negotiation skills. Litigation is something that may or may not come up in certain cases. A lot of the cases that we place pro bono, including special education while you're here today, resolves through negotiation and settlement. And the lawyer is a big player in getting there. And oftentimes settlement is really the best option for our clients to achieve the outcome that's best for the family and for the client. However, sometimes litigation is necessary to achieve the client's goals. And so if you're more or less interested in litigation, we can talk about it. Part of my job as pro bono director is really finding a nice match of the type of experience that's going to be best for you and best for the client. Concrete results for children's, the last thing listed, of course, that's not the least of all in terms of the reasons why people are doing pro bono with us. So it can be very rewarding. Some of our cases end in cupcakes, some end in hugs. There are lots of clients who are just repeatedly thanking their pro bono attorneys and their team for the outcome that they have in their special education case. So sometimes we're seeing folks who are set on a path to graduate where otherwise they wouldn't. Children who are really struggling academically, behaviorally, and not having supports in place can have a big impact on the family. A lot of parents might be called out of work to go to school, or the child is sent home. There's an array of things that are happening when clients are coming to us that really are impacting the family. And so the results that you're achieving in these cases make a big difference for that child's education, but also can improve the functioning of the family as a whole. So we hear that's rewarding, and we agree that that's pretty rewarding. How do you get involved? So many of you may already be on our listserv. That's something that we send out to communicate our upcoming trainings, as well as the available cases that we have pending at that particular moment. There may be cases that I have in between listservs, so we can always communicate about whatever you might be looking for or interested in. If you are signed up, then you're getting those already. We will sign you up today if you aren't already included. If for some reason they're not coming through, please ask. In terms of training, you're already here, but we do have the link to where our materials are on the website, so you can access those later on our pro bono page. My email address is here as well, so I'll be here during breaks to chat with you and stay a little bit after the training. I know many of you may need to head off to other obligations, but feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer questions. Again, it's all about the right fit for you and for the client, and so we can talk and figure out whatever it is that will be best moving forward. Thinking about taking a case, you'll see a note here about co-counseling. Most of our pro bono attorneys do co-counsel. It is not a requirement on our end, but it is something that we see regularly in our pro bono teams, and it is pretty successful, I would say. It's a way to have somebody out there doing the work with you. It can be a way to distribute the workload. It can be something that I think is beneficial to the pro bono attorney achieving the client's goals, and a nice supplement to CLC being the mentor. We're not out there co-counseling with you, we're mentoring, and when you do have a co-counsel, you might have that additional layer of support of someone who's out there in meetings and advocating with you. Okay, so let's say you get to that great, wonderful process that some of you have gotten to of actually selecting a case and finding that good fit. What does it mean to have a case placed with you at CLC? What does that look like? So I mentioned Alyssa earlier. You're going to get an email, most likely from her or from myself, with information about the case that you're taking. And that's where your mentor assignment is going to be. That's where the information for running conflicts is going to be, the intake that we did with the client. You're going to get a lot of things right there up front in that case placement email. You'll see for conflicts clearing, there are a couple of things, that mentoring and getting started bullets at the bottom. So conflicts clearing is sort of the green flag for us to know, okay, mentor knows you're ready to move forward. You don't have a conflict in this matter. And so you're going to have some initial recommendations from the mentor about how to get started on that case. They're going to look at the intake. They're going to see you representing Mrs. So-and-so. And they're going to provide some thoughts about the case based on the intake information that we received as just a way to jumping off and getting off on the right foot on the case. The other thing, of course, is getting started on the case. And so you'll see in these emails that we're saying, hey, go ahead and reach out to the client. And don't be afraid to do that before you connect with our mentor. Having that contact, being able to, I mean, these are great phone calls. Calling someone to say, I'm going to be your lawyer, and we're going to set up a time to meet to talk about it. People are really grateful, and they're excited to get that call. So you can have a call, no stress, no pressure, just to set up a meeting, and then you can connect with our mentor first if that's going to make you feel more comfortable before you actually go and sit down for that initial meeting. So this is the overview of what the case placement process is like. And again, I'm here to answer questions and chat with you more in detail when the time is right for you. Let's go ahead and shift now to the training for today, go over some logistics and talk a little bit about the materials that are in front of you. Wi-Fi, I know everyone's interested in Wi-Fi. So you're either going to see a glass stand on the table, and that's sort of in the middle tables here, or you're going to see an index card that has the Wi-Fi information. So you'll see a guest option for Wi-Fi, and you'll see the password. So if you have any questions, let me know, but there's the Wi-Fi information. Another important logistic is restrooms. So when you exit the conference room and there's that long hallway that you came down, you might remember there are a couple of steps. So once you go up the steps, the first hallway to the right, to your right when you're walking out this way, is going to be the women's room. And then the next hallway is the men's room. There's no key or password. Okay, those are logistics. You'll also see in front of you blank index cards. So we've got a lot of material that we'll be going through today, and that'll be an opportunity for you to jot down some questions. And as we're seeing how our time is going, we'll certainly address questions as best we can. But that's just a nice placeholder if there's something that you want to make sure you don't forget that you can ask either during the training or after. We are also video recording this training. No worries, the audience is not on the video. It's just showing whoever is standing at the podium in the slides. So we will update our online materials, and have no fear, you won't be on camera today. You all look lovely, though, if we were to switch around the cameras. Okay, great. So talking about those materials, so you've got some pieces of paper in front of you. You have some loose pieces of paper. One is an available cases list. And this is a nice example of what we have for special education matters. These are case summaries. It's giving you some brief information about what the case is, what the issues are, what we've learned from the client through our intake process. All of these cases that you see today are cases where we are looking for an attorney for all of these clients. So in DC, the educational decision-making rights are with the parent, unless there's been something court-ordered otherwise to the contrary. So here the client is the mother in all of these cases. And so we may talk about these. This is something that you can also ask questions about. You'll see that the first case that's listed, there is an 8-year-old child who's sent home frequently for behavior. So you heard me talk a little bit earlier about how we do have cases where children are being sent home or parents are being asked to come down to the school and spend time while the child is struggling. However, there may be evaluations that are needed to identify supports and services to help a child with behavior, so that the answer isn't mom having to come down to the school or the child having to leave and, of course, miss on education. So that's something that we do see a bit. So that's not rare. In this case, we have a child with a particular diagnosis. So again, I was telling you we work with pediatricians. So sometimes we're getting the referral there, and we might hear from the doctor, oh, we just diagnosed this child with X, which we think may be impacting their academic performance. That might be impacting what's going on at school. So you'll see that information if we have that as well. There is a diagnosis in case B that is an exact example of that. And so that's a recent diagnosis and something that we think is very much at play, and a nice point to really follow up on it so that we can make a plan for that child to be successful in school. And then the last one, you have a 13-year-old child who's in the 8th grade but reading at a 3rd grade reading level. We see a lot of that as well. So children are really behind. That can be tough. That can, of course, look like a lot of different things. It can be really tough to be in class and be that far behind in terms of having the right services and supports to be able to make progress. That's really critical. And so in this case, you'll see that there are a lot of different diagnoses as well for this child to be followed up on. The clients that we're representing are amazing advocates for their children, and so we will talk to them about, what they're sort of flagging. They know their kids, they're the expert for their child, and they'll be able to say, this has gotten worse. My child's regressing. He used to be able to do this, and now this year he can't. Or this is what's happening with grades. Or I asked about an evaluation, or I asked if we could have a meeting, and they're not getting responses the way that I would say they should. And so that is an example of where having a lawyer come on to help that parent move the process forward and have meetings and get evaluations can make a big difference because these clients are pretty incredible, and they're really great advocates for their children. But there is a difference having Esquire behind your name, and that does really highlight the impact and value of doing pro bono work and handling these cases. So think about these. That gives you a little bit of frame of reference for what we're going to be talking about today, knowing that we've got a spectrum of different educational matters that come to us. You'll also see a trainings flyer. So if you're interested in those other types of trainings, some of you might already be signed up for our subsequent trainings, but you'll see the dates for guardian ad litem, caregiver custody, and housing conditions. So feel free to sign up and see us again for any of those trainings that are coming up. If you can't make them, we'll put materials online for those as well. You'll see a couple of surveys. I know that word. I just want to apologize as soon as I say it. Who likes a survey, especially if there's not like a gift card attached. I don't have any gift cards. I have no incentive except that data is really helpful. So if you're bought into data like I am, then then you're just on my team there. So we've got a couple. One is about today's training. So we have changed our trainings over time because this is for you, and we want it to be helpful for you. So if there's a way where we can pivot, do something better, certainly let us know what's working, what isn't working. Anything's fair game. So any feedback we appreciate, and you can hand those off to Alyssa at the end of the day. The other is a survey about you. And so we're trying to gather some information that we haven't consistently really had at our fingertips in the past that I think will help us be more efficient and effective in placing cases for clients. As one really easy example, language skills. So being able to know who in our pro bono partners have particular language skills, that can help us when a client comes to us and we really need somebody who's speaks the language to be able to represent them. It can be really tricky when we don't have those names or know who might be able to help. Okay, so thank you so much in advance for completing those. If you've done a survey electronically, the pro bono attorney survey, because we've sent that out in the listserv or in different things, that's totally fine. So you don't need to do it twice if you've already done it. All right, that gets us to your bound materials in front of you. Many thanks again to Kings and Spalding. We've got everything nicely tabbed here, so you'll see the cover sheet of what is in here. I know it's been a rainy morning, so we're starting a little bit later, so we'll be watching our time to keep on time. What do we all need to really make sure we don't forget? Lunch. We're all going to be hungry. We're all going to need to take a beat and get our blood sugar up. So lunch is scheduled for 11:30 today. So we want to make sure that we're meeting that time. But we've got some sessions beforehand that we're going to go through. And again, any questions that you might have, please feel free to put those on those index cards. You're going to see that I talked about our medical legal partnership. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, briefly get into some of the strangeness of schools in DC that may or may be more or less familiar to some of you. We're going to get into a lot of nuts and bolts about special education all before lunch. And then after lunch, we're going to talk about 504 plans. And so you saw a reference to that if you were reading Case A. We're going to talk briefly about that. A lot of the work we're doing is around IEPs, individualized education programs, but sometimes we are dealing with 504 plans, something different that we'll, of course, explain. Handling a special education case. So we're going to really think about, what does that mean? What does it mean working with clients? What does it mean going to these IEP meetings? What are some do's and don'ts and tips? So we're going to get into that sort of stuff after lunch. And then we're going to end the day with due process hearings. A lot of these cases don't make it to due process hearing, but as lawyers, we know you're always building a record. And so you want to be thinking about that from the outset, even if that's not where the case goes. And it's probably good to get some information about what would that look like if that's what we're talking about. What would litigation look like if you're considering that in one of these cases? So that's how we'll sort of wrap up our day. As you flip over to tab 4, the training manual table of contents, this is what's on that flash drive. And so some of these words and terms might mean something different to you by the end of the day because you'll have heard all of this great information about special education law and practice. But I'll mention now, so we have some samples. Again, not having to reinvent the wheel. We have some sample documents for the case, for doing special education cases. We've got the law. We've got different policies from OSSI. We have different policies from DCPS. You'll see early intervention is huge. We've got materials about that. Evaluations, that's another big part of this work. So again, we're trying to figure out what's really going on with this child and what are the services and supports needed to meet the specific needs of that child. And so evaluations is often a way that we get there to really know what is going on. Eligibility, IEPs, you're going to see that in there. This keeps going on, right? This is a really long table of contents. So just the length of time it's taking me to go through this is, I think, demonstrating how much is on that flash drive. This is why we didn't print any of that out, right? No one would want to carry it home. Placements. Sometimes in our cases, and this usually is going to be an issue for if a case is going to litigate, placement might be the reason why. So that's a popular reason for litigating. If you've really got to change the change the child's placement. And we can talk more about what that means, but sometimes there's a cost. And that might be a reason that we're not in agreement with the school because the school system would have to pay for that change if we're going to a private placement, for example. That might be what the child needs. Depends on the case. Compensatory education. We've just got an authorization in for that. You're going to see the rest of the manual goes through building your case, gathering information. So we have some tip sheets from CLC that you can use as well. There are tip sheets about litigating, so you're going to see that at the end. And we've got samples, so due process complaint. You could check out a sample just if you're curious as you're learning more about this. We've got samples of directs and cross-examinations. And the manual continues to other issues that come up, like discipline, those 504 plans that I mentioned, bullying, and just sort of a miscellaneous section at the end. So there's a lot on that flash drive. There's a lot there that you can check out. I would say, as we're going through the training today, remember that we've got a lot of these materials there. Later, if there's something that you were really, kind of marinating about, feel free to check out that manual and reach out with questions. We don't expect you to master anything today, which sort of gets into my training takeaways. But as I'm very excited about this school bus. So some of you maybe have seen it before, but here's our agenda live, and our school bus is just going to do something like this. That took me, 15 minutes or something at some point last year, but I still enjoy it. It's still fun. I don't know why. Life is too serious, I guess. So we're going to ride the school bus down this agenda today. We're going to go just section by section. I'm going to be turning it over in just a second. But those training takeaways. So it's not to be a master. It's not that you're walking out being an expert in special education today, but you're gaining some familiarity with the content. You're knowing that you've got lots of resources and places to go to to, just have a refresher of some of this information and a good place to check out information before you're talking to a mentor and really brainstorming on a case. The need, I've already mentioned, the need is significant. And so we have many more clients coming to us than we can meet. And so we do rely on pro bono. Pro bono helps us make that really broad community impact that we otherwise couldn't. So remember that being a lawyer is what often makes a difference. What type of lawyer you are is really not critical to doing this work successfully. It's critical to doing your other work successfully, but doing pro bono with us, the advocacy skills, being able to really streamline issues and advocate, being an attorney, that's really something that's so helpful. And sometimes you're getting cases moving just because you sent that email and made the request and people see that you're a lawyer. So just being a lawyer makes a really big difference here. Our request, I already asked about the surveys here. Certainly reach out, ask questions during breaks. Leave us questions on those index cards as well so we can follow up if we don't get to anything today. And if you're interested in cases now or later, please reach out and don't hesitate to ask questions. With all of that being said, we're going to move this bus one way or the other. We're going to start off with, again, a brief section talking about our medical legal partnership at Children's Law Center. We're also going to talk about kind of the wacky school system in DC. So if it seems strange in some ways, then you're in the right place, and that's how it's supposed to feel. So Jeannie Tillery is a supervising attorney at Children's Law Center, and she is going to be doing a lot of our training today. We have a presenter home with a sick kid. All of you look really healthy, which is really exciting for this time of year. We know things have been going around. And so Jeannie's going to be powering through a lot of things today. You'll see Sarah Florrie listed on some of the materials. She's a supervising attorney at Children's Law Center as well. Both of them are mentors through our mentoring program. And so they could be your mentor when you take on a case with us. I know that she is getting in and had been stuck in traffic. So just really quick, which is great, right? Rainy day. If you already have a case or have taken a case with Children's Law Center, could you just show of hands really briefly? Okay, great. And if you have taken, if you have attended any pro bono events, trainings, anything with CLC, another show of hands, separate from cases. If you worked at CLC, we have an alum in the room. Okay, great, excellent. So a lot of new folks are here today. Are there any initial questions about anything that I've said in our introduction before we pass it off to Jeannie in a moment? Okay, great. A lot of you have found coffee.